So go on then, mate. How many backups are you rocking these days? Be honest.
Oh, let's have a look. So everything what I have goes on 2 bay 718 plus. So
You
that's
got your RAID?
RAID 1, which is a mirroring. Both drives are being mirrored. So in a way, it's a backup, but I know theoretically it's not. Then I got also DS118, which synchronizes with the 718 2 bay.
Cool.
And I also do very often external backup, USB plug-in and backup. And so I would say I have 3 copies, technically.
Oh, I was going to say, I'd say 2 at a push there. You got any cloud? Anything like that?
Cloud, yeah, I got Dropbox. I got Drive, Google Drive, and I got Synology Cloud, which probably not going to count as a 3-to-1 backup option.
And there you go. That is the world's dullest dating video. If you're single and interested, Eddie's available. Hello and welcome back. Here we are back on NAS Compares here, and today, of course, as the thumbnail described, we are talking about QLocker. It's been well over a week since this really kicked off. We talked about it a matter of days ago now, and of course things have progressed a little bit further, but today's video is more about talking about QLocker, and me and Eddie kind of not really positioning blame, but definitely talking about what people's expectations are of QNAP, what people's feelings are about QLocker, and somewhere in the middle there, because there's a lot of ambiguity between expectations of the end user and their storage and what QNAP should or should not have to commit to generally in their product. Me and Eddie, obviously we're doing this on Zoom, we're far away, but Eddie here and me do have slightly different opinions on some of this, which we're going to go through in this video. Before we go any further, it's worth highlighting, if you don't know what QLocker is, we've already done a big old video. I recommend you check that one out. Otherwise, this video is going to be largely useless to you. But long story short, QLocker was a malware attack that affected QNAP devices that were connected to the QNAP cloud system, and a vulnerability was utilized via that remote access system there to get into and inject commands into QNAPs that made them start zipping up smaller files, zip them up real small, and then it left a README text that was like, ha ha ha, your files are knackered. You have got to go to this web address here, give us 0.01 Bitcoin, I believe, which is about 500 Nika, I think, give or take. What's a Nika these days? And then from there, they would give you the passkey and you could unzip it. And lots of people are pissed about this. So this is still ongoing. There are resolutions firing around, some of which I talk about in the comments. But straight away, Eddie, so tell me, what do you think on this? What are your pros and cons? What is your opinion on this?
Yeah, it's actually very funny that they call it malware, because to have malware, you actually need to have virus file on your NAS, where in this situation, it wasn't the case, because what happened is hackers took advantage of a vulnerability on QNAP HBS, which is hyper backup sync software, which you normally would use to synchronize with your Dropbox or your Google Drive Cloud or another Synology. And hackers just figured out that there is a loophole that you can get through the NAS. And they didn't have actually access to files as you would normally, but they just had access to like a command line. So they could send Linux commands to this NAS and do things like that. So they took advantage of built-in 7-zip program. What is there? So all they did, they just activated, like, say, let's encrypt everything what is on this NAS on the 7-zip and use this key. So to get this key, you need to contact them. Or if you were not panicking at the first and actually understood what's going on, you could have actually gone in a back door in a backend and see that the zips are still happening, and these are the passwords which are used to zip all these files up. So you could have taken the password throughout the process.
That's sadly closed for the most part now.
But of course, when you're being attacked, the always first rule is disconnect from Ethernet or disconnect the power. So this is what how
I don't know about the power. That's a bit strong.
Really bad. Yeah. Once they disconnected, they lost the chance to actually get a key. So that was probably what hackers actually hoped for. So this is the thing.
One thing I would add for people at home as well. Some people actually did have data taken. A lot of that is because when these vulnerabilities were
Yes,
being
because you
exposed,
can, one of those commands, of course, can be send this file to this location, because through the commands you can command NAS to do anything. So that's why also lots of companies who got affected, they need to go through these GDPR rules, because within 24 hours you need to actually evaluate the damage and notify every single person, business whose data could have been stolen, because they can take them to court. This is a really dangerous game. But
no, I mean, for me, like the idea that people's data, like they're holding on to this pile of data, which to them is ultimately useless, is obviously it's quite frustrating for them. And obviously when this vulnerability happened, I'm willing to bet that NASes that had particularly poor security, almost certainly the hackers were pinged back to go, these ones are particularly susceptible. And that is where I think a lot of the data transmission probably took place more than in any other occurrence.
Yeah, because this is the thing. This is the thing why people got affected, because those people who didn't have installed all the latest firmware and antivirus and malware remover, all of these things, and those who are playing with something like port forwarding and things like that, those are the people who got actually affected. Because from outside world, if I'm going to switch on my NAS here in office, you won't be able to get into my NAS. There's no chance. You can't. First thing what you need to get through is your router. That's your first firewall, your first wall to get through. And then once you get through the wall, then you can start attacking the NAS and anything else. But in this situation, if someone could attack your NAS, this is already something to think of, that your other devices could be affected as well in your network, not just this NAS. You might not know that you have opened this door for others to come in and do what they want with any device, with your computer even.
So are you saying, like, when people set up the QNAP Cloud service, there is the option in there?
There's not QNAP Cloud, because this is other thing what people got wrong. If you had QNAP Cloud enabled, this is your safe way of connecting to your NAS. Because lots of people think, like, they all usually Google, like, how can I connect to my NAS through the internet? And first thing what they're going to find is enable port forwarding. And this is when you got into trouble, because without knowing what you're doing with port forwarding, you're just opening a door, because this is what port forwarding is. It's like saying, I'm going to open door Z, but I'm not going to tell anyone which door I opened, and you can get through this door. And then if you don't have firewalls, or you don't limit which IP can get through this door, then you're just saying to neighbors, like, okay, all of you are welcome. As long as you know which door is open, you can come in. There's no some bodyguard by the door saying, like, oh, you don't have an ID to get in. So it's very dangerous, because when you enable Cloud Link, what happens is you don't open a door. You open a door from your NAS to a QNAP server, which is safe and secure. This is a tunnel what you created. And then
clearly
when you
not that safe or secure.
It is, because it's easier to keep safe a QNAP server rather than every single QNAP on the world, isn't it? It's easier just to make one big castle, which is having strong rules. So how it works is that with QNAP Cloud Link, whenever you're outside the home, you want to connect to your NAS, you first connect to QNAP server, and then QNAP is communicating to your NAS. And that's the mistake what everyone's saying, oh, quickly disable Cloud Link. That's nonsense. Don't disable port forwarding, disable anything else what can let people through your router and through your defenses, and enable your Cloud Link. That's your safe way of connecting. Same like Synology Quick Connect, it's the same thing.
Because I think a lot of people, one of I would argue people's disappointment in some places here, they are getting a NAS, they are connecting their data, they're getting all their data and then connecting it to the internet. And whether they're managing an expectation where they think they shouldn't be allowed to do this unless it's safe, or they're being told it's safe when it's not. I think a lot of people, that's their big disappointment, that they're taking the NAS, they're using the online services we just talked about there, and they've suddenly walked away and gone, well, it must be safe because I've been given the impression that it is safe. Is that a reasonable assumption or not?
Because once you plug in Ethernet cable, it doesn't mean you have connected to the internet. Yes, you could potentially get out to the internet through your Ethernet, but you need to make this hole. You need to punch
No, but
holes
that's
in
what I
the.
mean. What I mean with my QNAP Cloud, when people are utilizing my QNAP Cloud services to connect, they are doing so in the feeling that things are bulletproof
And it
or
is
things are
no
safe.
one has taken advantage of CloudLink. They didn't. They took advantage of a poor software, which is HBS, which is annoying because this is something you're using to back up your devices. But they took advantage of this thing, not the CloudLink.
Stop there for a sec. Real quick, are you 100% certain about what you're saying?
Yes,
100%. Cool.
they
I'm
didn't
just
take
double
advantage of
checking.
CloudLink.
Cool.
We can
Because again,
carry on.
okay, cool. Just making sure. 1 minute. What's your next point on your list?
Wait, I'll finish what I wanted to say actually.
Oh, cool.
Because the other thing, what QNAP response was after this attack, they were saying like, these are the things to do to keep your NAS safe. And then they were saying like, change the password. Yes, you should change password, but this wasn't something what you would prevent this from happening. or delete the admin account or something. This is something they are forcing people to have by default, admin account. But yes, you should change your admin because that will take extra time for a hacker to guess what sort of usernames actually have admin rights on your NAS. So if you create some X112 username, that's going to take quite a long time for a hacker to figure out that you need to attack this account. And obviously root accounts always need to be disabled, which they do by default. So
two-step
authentication as well. But these are all of these things, what they are saying, this is for preventing someone trying to physically log in into your NAS or trying to do brute force login into your NAS. This is not something about preventing a loopholes, because to prevent something like this to happen again, you can't, because you need to think of this as a computer, like your Windows, for example. You need antivirus, because if you think that you installed antivirus and now your computer is safe, that's not true. It's not true, because how it works, all antivirus programs, is that antivirus is creating a patch only when someone gets attacked. So as right now, my computer is vulnerable to certain things which no one in the world knows. When I get hit, I report that I was hit, and then these software makers, the patch makers, they quickly creating a patch for this vulnerability. But always in the world, there was going to be the case that someone or a few of people will be hit by this virus. There's no way of escaping it. Same like a flu or any like disease. You can't make a vaccine without someone having it.
Too soon, man. Too soon.
So the thing is with QNAP, they did what they have to do. Of course, they could do things quicker and be more open to things, but they detected that there is a vulnerability and they created a patch. And if you had antivirus on your NAS system, you would have this patch applied and you would be safe.
And what about people's feelings at the moment about how their data is locked up? Now, this is something I've talked about already in the previous video, and I do think an element of people's annoyance, definitely not the lion's share, most certainly not the lion's share, but a decent chunk of people's annoyance is their feeling that their data is now lost to them. It's trapped to them and encrypted, and they don't want to facilitate this whole ransomware thing by paying. So as far as they're concerned, they're annoyed at QNAP that they felt they were sold a backup and their data is now lost to them. Now, I know this is something I've touched on before in the other video, but I'd be really interested to get your viewpoint on that.
Yeah, exactly. Lots of people think that I got this 2-bay NAS, that's my backup. Look, obviously those two drives are backing each up. But you can't, yeah, exactly. But you can't call it a backup, because what if there is a fire, flood, or burglar runs in and takes your NAS? That's not a backup. You need a second copy away from the device. So either it's USB or cloud or another NAS or something. You need something like that to prevent from this. It's not just hackers. Hackers is probably the least of your problems what you could have. More likely that there's going to be data corruption because you lost electricity or something, or kids were playing these drives and pulling out the drives. You got more risks than hackers, I think, in this case. Of course, it's annoying because you think like, I bought this device and I should be safe, but you can't think like that. You need to think backup always.
And do you not think when people are getting their NAS and they're backing up from their phones, their tablets, their whatever, and it goes on to the NAS, and therefore, as far as they're concerned, that's a backup? And again, I appreciate that is most certainly not a backup, because in some cases they then delete it off those devices and that's the single copy. But a lot of people would argue that the idea of having another layer to their backup, buying a USB, buying another NAS, getting a cloud account, these are all additional expenses. And again, I think it is worthy. I think you should value your data by how much it costs to lose it, not how much you think it costs or the hardware costs. But still, nevertheless, do you think QNAP have maintained their remit? They have done everything with their hardware that they said it can do and should do?
Yes, I think they did. In general, of course, they did what they promised. They have, because what is NAS is 2-bay RAID box. So RAID worked. You got those two copies. You could have enabled
of your encrypted data.
They also gave you option to do snapshots. Why you didn't do that? If you did the snapshot, even if this ransomware hit you, you could just like say, whatever, I just roll back to yesterday's version. I got all my files back. So if you can think of this NAS as a backup if we want to. Physically, you got those two disks in there copying each other. And not just that, if you enable snapshot and versioning, then not only you got two copies, you also have several copies of single freaking file, which you can go back in time. So you can treat it as a backup, but you just need to think what vulnerabilities, what sort of disasters can happen. Not just hackers. You always need to think about other things like burglars and fire and things like that.
And what about, and just before because later we're going to move into a section in a bit where I want to kind of think what I think QNAP should be doing moving forward from this. But before we get there, when it comes to people being notified, because a lot of people, again, are highlighting that this is a vulnerability that was brought to QNAP's attention a while ago. And a lot of people have questioned how the brand basically, one, responded, and two, how they alerted their end user base. I mean, again, what is your opinion on that? This idea that I might have a QNAP. I've genuinely got a QNAP next to me here that I'm using for a video. And this NAS here, I have a preset routine of when I'm setting it up. But generally, because I'm using a lot of these for different videos, I won't attach a lot of my personal information to them because I'm going to be wiping them constantly. But a lot of people have only got the one. They may have provided their personal information, they may not have, but a lot of people do feel that QNAP were not particularly proactive about letting people know. So what do you think of that?
They did a poor job of communicating, but it was very funny. I watched on YouTube as well, someone who got affected, and he said like, look, if hackers could figure out this loophole of and affect the NAS, why couldn't QNAP do the same thing? You know, if hackers thought, oh, there's a hole, so QNAP should utilize the same hole and apply the forced patch for these old NASes. That was so funny. They could break into their own NASes and fix it. But seriously, they could check these things, because even with your broadband router, if you got Virgin, BT, or any other company, if they are up the game, they will always do scans on their behalf and check if there are any ports open, if there are holes in your system, vulnerabilities, and they will send you email, if not even call you, saying that, listen, you got these ports open, it's not safe. You're going to infect your computers. They do that. And the same QNAP could do as well. They could do their own scans, saying like, oh, these are all QNAP devices. I'm doing daily checks. I can get through these ports. Are you sure you don't want to close them up or use some other means of connecting, like VPN or a QTS cloud or something? So they could have done better job. That's very true. The people who did have malware remover app, they could have set up their email alerts. So if it's happened, they could have received the email when they had the patch, you know, but they did a really bad job actually, yeah,
I
not
think
communicating.
when it comes to notifying end users, I think there is the email notification system is pretty straightforward, quite easy. SMS and text-based notifications, it is not very user-friendly in the user interface to set that up, obviously because of call plans and regions and stuff like that.
Yeah, there's no easy way.
App pushes. I'm not sure if there's desktop pushes. I'm not sure if that's a thing that's
If you
on there.
use their RSS link, this feed, then you could install it into your daily feeds check on your Windows or something. But why would you do that? The fact that you are doing something like that, using a feed or checks manually on your behalf, then that
It's
already
you
proves
doing
that
it,
there is
not them.
mistrust on the brand. Yeah,
I mean,
brand
again,
should give means of emailing people. Yeah.
but if we move into this next bit, so this is going to be more me, but this is what I think QNAP. These are the things that people are crying out that QNAP either should have done or should do moving forward. But there's going to be a large area of contention from a large proportion of the user base. So the first thing that lots and lots of people, and you kind of half touched on it there, is the idea of forced updates. The idea that the NAS should force updates internally, that it should make sure if there is a new firmware version, it should stick it on there. If there's a new firmware version of an application, there shouldn't be do you want this? It should be just bang it on there. Now, I personally disagree with that. I do disagree with that. I'd be interested to hear what you think. But although I think that might have solved this for some people, because there are people right now, as we speak, that have got a NAS in a cupboard, in a drawer, in a room, in a house, in a shed, in an attic, that has been connected and probably has about 700 updates waiting. And one of the biggest issues with this vulnerability that's been highlighted is obviously the older your firmware, the higher the statistical likelihood that you are vulnerable because of patches that have come later on. So on the one hand, I have to concede that forcing updates in the future may well avoid things like this. It still doesn't make it foolproof, as you rightly point out. But forced updates, if the QNAP did that, if they actually said, right, in the next version, we're forcing updates. We've listened to you. A number of you have said, if you'd have updated and been more on the ball and told me there was updates, I'd have done this. Why are you giving me the choice? You should force it. If they did that, how would you feel about the brand if they forced the updates?
Not always you want something like that, because few apps, especially if those are third-party apps, they got dependencies on other things. So if you're going to update, for example, a new version of database or PHP or any other bare bones in your NAS, you might actually disable an app, you know, because in some situations, maybe I have backups. I don't care about these old viruses, because I know if something will hit me, then I can recover. But if I run email server or web server, I'm not going to now go for an update, which is going to break entire my business model, just so that I'm safe for this virus, which I don't care of. If it's going to hit me, then I'm going to deal with it. But I got the backup, or I got maybe two NASes which are doing this high availability. One is dead, other case over. Sometimes it's more important to just stay in the business rather than you know, be protected of a virus which wouldn't actually affect your business. So I think in some cases, some apps should have compulsory updates. Like in this case, it was a hybrid share sync, which has no dependencies. It's just simple backup solution. You're synchronizing your cloud or synchronizing to your other NAS is just for backing up. This is an app where QNAP would have could have forced an update, and no one would be actually affected. But if they wanted to force update, like they, for example, for databases or something, because they said they have multimedia vulnerability as well, SQL injection. This is already something what you should consider on your own. Yes, there is vulnerability. Someone can get through this app, but not always you want to do the fix.
So another thing people have raised, and again, you kind of half went this way as well, is this idea that if you're going to have a NAS that is connected to the internet, that is going to be connected in some way that has an open door, be it with QNAP Cloud, be it with just port forwarding or whatever, If you're going to do that, the NAS shouldn't let you unless you have at least 2 backup or recovery options in place. This idea that people should only be allowed to have that access, and again, to me, that's so strict.
Yeah, it's annoying. Same like when sometimes they're asking you to create a password, and then you spend 10 minutes of creating password because it says you need to have small letters. Also, you need to have a special symbols. You need to have a numbers, and you just will keep on adding. You just want to smash that thing.
And you understand they're doing that for a reason, but at the same time, you're right. That level and also the cost of it, I imagine, would be quite prohibitive to a number of people. The idea that they would have to be like, oh, cool, I've just bought this NAS with drives. Oh, I've got to buy a USB. And I've got to buy a cloud account. Wait, I've got to buy another NAS. And I think a lot of people would get frustrated before they even heard that ransomware was a viable option.
Yeah, exactly. I think it would be enough for on their side, on QNAP side, just to keep on pinging these all NASs, all QNAPs, looking for vulnerabilities. That would be enough already, because then you send the email, you can ignore email, or you can take action and say that the way you're doing things, I wouldn't do, and it's not safe. And then it's your choice to do something about it, because sometimes you really don't care about vulnerabilities. If you're just using that NAS, for example, torrents or something, you don't care what's happening with that NAS. All you want is just like open that port, do what you want.
And I guess that leads on quite neatly onto the last recommendation. And this is one that's, I think, has less traction than anywhere else, but I do think it's one that I think a lot of QNAP supporters have put out there. And it's the idea that when you sign up to the device, you set it up for the first time, and then very early doors, it goes, do you want access to my QNAP cloud? And you can click skip. And then later on, it's like, oh, do you want to add a user account? Great, to go for that. But it doesn't, after that, it really doesn't push. You shouldn't really be using your admin account day to day. Why aren't you using two-step verification? We need an email from you, and to verify that email, we need a phone number from you. And it's a lot of the time, because they have the security counselor. I don't know if you've seen or utilized, I know you're more of a Synology guy, but they have the security counsel on there, which basically does a whole scan of your system, and it goes, right, these are the things that are problematic. And some of them are pernickety in the extreme, like your password's not that hard sort of thing. And there's more to it than that. But they also have that, and they have all the stuff with the antivirus and the malware and all the other scam stuff on there. But despite all of that, there's very little push to go, we aren't going to let you go any further until you verify an email, verify a phone number, enable two-step, stop using the chuffing admin account, that sort of thing. And all of these, although technically they may not prevent malware in the grand scheme of things, in the same way, they're all very conscious security things that people either don't know that they can enable, because if they've been told, they might have enabled it, or two, if they choose to ignore that, then the onus then sort of gets spread out a little bit. I mean, again, if you set up a QNAP for the first time, Eddie, and it said to you, right, we need an email from you to verify so we can alert you if something happens with your box, and we're saying to you, we need to have some sort of push notification system. Otherwise, we're not going to allow you to open ports. We're not going to allow you to activate the internet. How do you feel about that if you were to buy
That depends how you present it usually, because if you just say, oh, we need your email address and don't explain why, then obviously you want to resist and you're going to give some fake email address just to get through that step. But if they're going to actually show you benefits of having an email address, then definitely you would opt in, because then you would they would say, like, we're gonna send you email only in urgent cases if something is not safe. You know, we're gonna be testing your NAS, your vulnerabilities from our side, and if we find something, we're always gonna let you know. We're not gonna send you any marketing rubbish and anything like that. Then if the message is clear and helpful, then why wouldn't you opt in?
I think one of the good examples, I think I raised this in the other video, if I'm sorry to be repetitious, everyone, but one of, I think out there, one of the best examples of update handling has always been for me gaming consoles, because most gaming consoles, and particularly individual games within a console, so if you think of the console as a NAS and the games as apps, lots of games and the consoles themselves, when a new firmware patch comes out, they're like, oh, there's a new firmware patch. Do you want it? If you don't have to have it, we are not going to let you play online. We aren't going to let you use online services. And mainly their argument is to do with cheats, stability, and stuff like that. But the residents, people have accepted that in console gaming culture as a thing. They will go, right, I don't want to use the new firmware update until I've watched a bunch of people didn't brick their PS4. But at the same time, they accept that it's part of the culture of gaming that they need those updates to access online services or anything even partially related to the apps and their online services. So I think that kind of logic would do very well if NAS companies really embraced that methodology. Again, I appreciate what you want to scream at me now is businesses would hate that, but I still think it would be a smart move forward, not just for QNAP, but generally for the industry in terms of data safety.
Exactly, because the problem is with these updates that they don't think about logistics of delivering these updates. Because when you look at Apple, for example, they will download that update already in the background, so you don't need to think about it. So it's going to be sitting there, and it's going to be saying, "Yeah, maybe you want to update," and then you say, "No, I don't want to update now." Maybe then they're going to say, "Maybe you want to do it during night because we have noticed that you're inactive during night, so probably we're not going to interrupt your daily routines with this stupid update, so we can activate it when you sleep." And same if QNAP and Synology would do the same approach and learn and bend around people's lives, then these updates would be more natural, because like Windows, you don't want to do update 9 o'clock in the morning when you just want to just start working, and they are pushing you the update. But if they would say like, "Oh, okay, install or remind me about this update at 9 p.m. or do it 1 a.m. in the morning," yes, why not? Thank you. and then it's smooth, But that's the problem. The way of delivery.
Again, it's at the moment, it still comes down to how QNAP is responding to people. And right now, I mean, people are finding ways to recover the encrypted data. And again, I think people are intentionally being rather, even now, I'm slightly hesitant to talk about some of the means and ways that people are recovering data. And I think a big part of that is the first time people spoke out properly, straight away, the vulnerability, the hackers changed their method, the key gen and stuff like that, the way it was being
because
generated.
You could share the same key for everyone, so they changed.
So I think there is an argument. I think QNAP themselves probably raised this argument, like they didn't want to shout too loud about stuff because they would say, "Oh no, then they'll change what they're doing and we have to root this out." We didn't want to talk about it until after the firmware update, but I think we can be frank, it's a moderately weak excuse.
Exactly, because they also probably realized that there are still so many NASes still alive which cannot be updated to this latest firmware, even because the support has ended, everything has ended. So there's nothing QNAP can do with those NASes. They can't patch them anymore. They are too old. But they know that when those people will be hit, they'll be shouting aloud and they'll be blaming QNAP, even though it's not supported that NAS anymore. It's old, and they don't want to shout. Scared, but they're supposed to shout.
I mean, again, we're going to wrap this video up in a sec, but if you are watching this and you've been affected by QLocker, do you know what? Even if you've been affected by AgeLocker, that's just coming in. We're going to be covering that in a wee bit. Can you do me a favor? In the comments, if you were affected, don't worry, you don't have to go nuts or anything. Just put your model ID. I think it'd be very interesting to see the models that are affected, because of all the information I've read online, it's generally a certain range of model, it's a certain price point of model, and it's certainly a different age group. And it's very interesting to see, because
exactly,
I think
it will be so useful from our side. Yeah, it will be so useful to know where is the correlation, what is similar in all these affected cases. Did they all have old firmware? Did they not have this antivirus and malware removal? Did they have open ports? Did they have what is that similarities, in all this situation? Because then we could actually investigate and then say, like, this is what happened, and this is how we can prevent this of happening again.
By we, he does mean the industry. There's only two of us. But yeah, other than that, I think we're going to call it a day there. We're going to try and do at least one of these a week from now on. But real quick, guys, if you are looking for any kind of assistance on network attached storage, or you've been hit by QLocker, or you are concerned about the security of a current or future purchase of NAS, go into the comments. There's a free link there to the free advice section at NAS Compares. It's not paid, it's unbiased. Again, it's run as a service. It's not going to be the quickest. It's only me and him doing it. So do me a favor, be a bit patient, extra day, but it's free advice, home or business. We will advise you every step of the way, and hopefully make sure your data is nice and tight. Eddie, have we missed anything?
Probably, but we're going to address it in comments probably, isn't it?
Absolutely. We'll be banging it off down there in the comments. But otherwise, thank you so much for watching, Eddie. I will catch you later. Everyone else, cheerio. Have yourself a lovely weekend. Bye-bye.